into RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's Reveler Sports.
Hello and welcome all you Rowdies fans to here on RBLR Sports, more specifically the Rowdies section for this podcast. My name is Leo Santos and I'm here and always joined by my co-host James. James, how are you doing today, my man?
Today I could be doing better is how I would put this. I think all Rowdies fans could probably be doing a little better right now considering the frustrating game. Let's stick with that word for now. The frustrating game this past weekend. But yeah, there could be circumstances. We could be dealing with something even worse than this. So I guess I'm glad that we're not.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. I would definitely feel a lot better if it wasn't a frustrating game. But as you alluded to, the Rowdies did tie this past Friday night at home 1-1 against New York Red Bulls 2. What I would say though, James, is that the fan attendance was impressive. I really hope it's like that for the playoffs. But the fan attendance, I believe it was the most all season. Watching it from the broadcast, that fan atmosphere looked really, really impressive to me. And I really regret I didn't get a ticket to go to that game.
Yeah, I was unfortunately unable to do, and I felt the same thing that you did, that it was just, I missed out on something that was obviously a very good experience because the fans, on their own are great without the game in front of them. It could be 2,000 people in the week, or it could be this crowd that we saw this past weekend. So I know that, when it gets bigger, it just gets louder. And unfortunately, I was unable to get out there and join them because they were doing a great job from everything that I saw. Yeah. So maybe they don't need us at least.
Just going to pile some more misery on us, James. Obviously, we give our predictions every week. The last episode, I predicted a 4-0 win, and it totally did not go that way. What did you predict, if you can remember?
My prediction was a 3-0 win. So both of us were wrong in two different aspects, both in the shutout aspect and in the winning the game aspect.
It just wasn't our day. It just wasn't our game. It has been my game for a while, and you had the little streak of yours. But, we'll see how we do later on in this episode. But before we jump into things, listeners, don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. We're at RBLR Sports, and also we mentioned in previous podcasts we charge. We don't charge at all. For people to listen to our show. We don't have no Patreons or anything like that. But the best way you can support us is by liking and subscribing to wherever you get your podcasts from. That could be Spotify, iHeartRadio app, Apple and Google Podcasts, YouTube, and other major podcast platforms. Basically, wherever you're listening to James and I or other sections in RBLR Sports, we'll be there. And also check out the t-shirt we collaborated with Cathedral. There's a link to it in the description from wherever you listen to your podcast. And all proceeds go to the Play for More campaign that was started by Forrest Lasso this season to give back to the community and to communities where he played in. It's a really, really fun way to get involved within the Rowdies community. So please check that out. And without further ado, James, let's get into it. James, you want to start out by telling us what the lineup was like heading into this game?
I can do that. I am going to pull up the sheet here where I had all of my notes, and we will go through that and much more about this game against the New York Red Bulls 2 team. So it was Evan Loro. Everybody could have guessed that. You didn't need me to tell you. At the back, Aaron Dean, Forrest Lasso, and Jordan Scarlett were all starting. Again, those are evergreens in this team. You don't really need me to tell you who's going to be back there. Then on the left wing, it was Leo Fernandez. On the right wing, it was Sebastian Dalgaard. Lewis Hilton and Lawrence White were the two that were more centrally based in the midfield, and Jan Ecker was playing in front of them. Sebastian Guenzati and Steven Dos Santos, Big Duba up top, were the two players that we saw in the attack, and that is the way that we started. And one of the strongest lineups that we have seen lately. I think that all of these players have played their way into the starting 11 over the course of this season, or even over the course of their career with the Rowdies. So I was pretty excited getting into it.
Yeah, so was I. I mean, we've seen some little squad rotation from the past couple of games, but seeing this lineup again, I'm pretty sure it got the majority of Rowdies fans excited to see them play again because we both know that during that winning streak that we enjoyed recently, it was mainly with these players that started against the New York Red Bulls too. We talk about Sebastian Dahlgren, Leo Fernandez always doing excellent on the wings. You have the strong back line and Lasso, Guillen, and Scarlett, and Evan Lauro, always reliable between the sticks. And also, you can always rely on your captain Guenzati and his striker plays alongside him, Sebastian Dos Santos. So when I first seen this, in my head, I'm thinking this is an automatic win. The Rowdies are, they might be able to pull off another 6-0 win against this New York Red Bulls 2 side. It didn't really go that way, The Red Bulls did make things difficult for the Rowdies. One thing I noticed early on was that it was going to be a very physical and aggressive game because the referee, she was just blowing, the whistle, she just kept on going the opening 10 to 15 minutes, and I already knew that, there's going to be a lot of fouls being committed. It was going to be a very physical game. And I think both sides, it might have started with the Red Bulls, but I knew both sides were going to have to get past, this mental stretch during the game where, you get the ball and you think someone's going to automatically foul you. You're going to want to argue with the ref. You're going to want to argue with the other team. Then it might just, take you out the game for a little bit in regards to not really doing what you want to do because you're still thinking about, how the hell did that player not get a yellow for what happened, or vice versa for the Red Bulls whenever a Rowdies player will foul them, and you're thinking, how come they didn't get a yellow?
Yeah, I think that, this is the way that the New York Red Bulls play from the first team to the second team. In fact, it is the way that Red Bull teams play all over the world. They have affiliates in Germany in the Bundesliga, in Austria in that Bundesliga, and I believe also in Brazil. You'll see this high tempo play in every single one of these teams, and they it's something that you could almost say indoctrinated in from an early age, especially with these all being academy players who have been playing there likely since they were 10 to 12 years old and moving up through the ranks until now they get to be an older teenager and they are nearly breaking into the first team, some of them. So there's obviously something that you could say about where these players learn how to, put other players off their game. It's exactly what you said. But all of those things are definitely factors in the problematic approach that the Rowdies had to deal with.
And that one thing, I agree with everything you just said, from how it starts from the bottom and works its way down to the top, and the other clubs are affiliated with the Red Bulls. One thing I also did notice in this game was that obviously with the lineup the Rowdies put out, sometimes they like to sit back, but in this case, I feel like they wanted to be that dominant team, so they were pressing forward. They were a team that had the ball more than the opposition, but for New York, they just love to sit back and wait for counter-attacking opportunities. They absorbed the pressure. They tolerated the amount of space they gave to the wingers and Fernandez and Dalgard, and also they tolerated the hold-up play and the run-ins from Guenzati and also Steven Dos Santos. And, it eventually worked because it came from honestly a crappy throw-in from Connor Anglin. I don't know who he was throwing the ball into, but they lose the ball. And it's really 3 simple passes to get that goal. One pass from a defender to a midfielder, and that defender gets another pass to the striker who, very easily beats Jordan Scarlett, catches Forrest Lasso off guard. Just simple ball and behind the back line, and the goal scorer for New York Red Bulls too. I can't remember his name, but he's the wrong goal. And when you're 1v1 like that, and although Evan Lauro is a really good goalkeeper, 9 times out of 10, the advantage is always going to go to the striker, especially for someone, playing in the USL. Although they still might be young, they do have that skill to put the ball back in the net, just like how they did. And they got the goal very, very early on. But again, it seemed like a goal that we've seen back in that rough stretch back in July from the Rowdies. But, it was everything for New York at the time was going well. It was going well according to the game plan. I'm pretty sure the coach set out for his side to follow.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's just the way that these players are raised to do. It's another facet of their game that they like to get the ball up the field as quickly as possible. And a lot of times you will see the Red Bulls teams actually just knock it very far, and then the attackers will go and try and chase the ball down. They didn't actually need to do that this time because, as Leo said, there were 2 passes from through the midfield that entirely cut out the entire Rowdies team, other than literally Evan Lauro back in the 18-yard box. The ball fell to, I believe it was Daniel Edelman, who turned and then played it on, and then that player who received it turned and he played it forward, just like you said. But in the process of those two passes, all of the Rowdies attackers were already on the wrong side of Daniel Edelman. When Daniel Edelman passed it along, that was all of the midfield. And then the final pass, it was another long pass and cut out our entire back line. So really, it's just something that you can't allow to happen. I understand that the Rowdies do like to play a high line so that they can apply pressure to a team like the New York Red Bulls too, who are, as we like to call them, the baby bulls. You know, it's a bunch of younger kids that generally haven't had as much experience at this level or at a top level of soccer. So, you know, it's a lot easier to get them off their game and try and, you know, get them to lose the ball in a bad position. If we don't do that and the line is so high, while they have the ball at their feet and they take those two quick passes like they do, then we could be caught out. So pressure needs to be put on the passer as soon as they have that, or everybody and their mother should be running back to get into defense, because otherwise we have these situations that we just saw.
Yeah, and you said like, okay, it's understandable if you concede a goal through counterattacking play, but it's another thing if the team you're conceding against is, one, they're at the bottom of the Atlantic Division, and two, they've only had about, I believe it was 5 wins throughout the season. You're gonna let a team like that, your own home, you know, really pick you apart with 2 to 3 passes. You know, that should not be happening. You know, if it's against a tougher opponent, maybe like Pittsburgh, or you know, if we get that far, you know, against like Phoenix Rising or something along those lines, it's different. But a team like, as we like to call them, the Baby Bulls, doing that to you, you know, I don't think you can really get away with much there, because it just looked too easy. And also, you know, whenever after that goal, it just seemed like New York, you know, once again, they sat back, they were patient, waiting for their chances. And I think they started to show that early on, even though they were the away side, they didn't fear playing the Rowdies, you know, at Al Lang, because I just felt like they kind of absorbed that moment and knew that they could really play spoilers. And I mean, their season's already done. They're eliminated from playoff contention. You know, they're just really playing just to finish out the season, because, well, every single team has to finish out the season for those who are eliminated. So, you know, they weren't really playing for anything besides maybe just pride and maybe to look themselves better. That way the actual Red Bulls team could look at them if they do want to play in that higher division. But James, would you say that it's possible that the atmosphere from Al Lang not only helped the Rowdies, but also gave the New York Red Bulls 2 side confidence to play a good game?
You know, I'm not sure that I would say it necessarily gave them confidence. What I would say specifically for the New York Red Bulls 2 team is that when you are in a position like you just enumerated for everybody, that your season is over and you're just playing for pride, you actually don't have anything to lose. Why would you go out there and be afraid of what's going to happen? You know, if you do lose the game, oh, well, you know, you got to give the Rowdies a good game regardless. You're not really playing for points at this time. So, and when you go out there under those circumstances, and there is the biggest crowd that you've played against this season, more than likely, because that's what Al Lang is capable of, and really that pride that we just mentioned, that is on the line here while nothing else is. You just want to show this crowd that, hey, I don't care what you have to say. I'm going to be a good player, and I'm going to probably turn into a professional someday. I'm assuming that's what was on most of their brains anyway. So,
yeah,
you know, maybe it's the case that rather than confidence, they were trying to, let's say, one up the crowd or stick it to them. I would say something more along those lines. But, you know, they, credit to them, it really played into their favor at this point. Maybe they just needed to play without that fear. But, you know, that comes with being a younger player, is that you have to learn to psych yourself into and out of games as you need. And I guess that, you know, when you can do it at a more consistent level, then you would probably be a more consistent professional and maybe end up at a different level than the New York Red Bulls 2 team, our beloved Baby Bulls.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything you just said. And you mentioned how you know, you really have nothing to play for besides pride. You know, basically just going out there and giving the Rowdies a really good game to play, and also a really good game for yourself to play. And I think that's what they did. during this game. Obviously they didn't lose, but they also didn't win. But they did play, spoilers. Basically, right now they're just acting as spoilers for whichever teams they got coming up
Exactly.
next, yeah, for the rest of their season. So you have to give credit to the way Red Bulls did come out and perform against the Rowdies because I'm pretty sure uh, people who betted their house on it are probably homeless right now. I probably would have bet my house on it too. But yeah, enough about the Baby Bulls. Let's move on to the Rowdies, who are actually in the playoffs. So who really won? Going for the Rowdies, I think the story of this game was just missed opportunities. I feel like there was plenty of chances to put this game to bed or even just win the game in general, but just a lot of missed opportunities, especially from Seba Gonzalez. He missed a couple of sitters or tap-ins or whatever you want to call them. Really good passes in the box for him to put away. I think both attempts were blocked by the New York Red Bulls goalkeeper. I was really impressive. Those saves were really impressive. Those reflex instinct saves to keep Seba Gonzalez out of the net. I feel like any other day he puts us away, especially in such the good form that he is right now. You would put almost your whole bank account that he puts those two goals away, or at least even just one of them away, and he doesn't put any of them at all. And one thing I also noticed about Seba, I don't know if you noticed this too, James, but his passing in the final third from like early on in the game to like throughout the rest of the game, it was really, really poor. There were times where Steven Dos Santos was making an amazing run inside the 6 yard box, and Seba just, gives a really poor pass either with the outside of his right foot or just doesn't generate enough power, puts it behind Steven Dos Santos or another player. It just seemed like it wasn't there for him on Friday night.
Yeah, I think that this is something rather than, assigning this any type of blame, like he was in his own head, or maybe he already thought that, every one of his shots was going to go in because that's what happened the last time we played this team. I think that probably it was more a case of just an off night. Personally, that's what I would go for. Now, is it possible that, one of those things that I just said is actually the case? It's possible, but I just wouldn't think so under the circumstances, because Seba has been banging them in left and right. And if you're in that form, whether or not you're thinking about having just beat this team 6-0, so you've been scoring in all these other games. So I don't think that necessarily that is going to play a role here. It's, it's just the same mentality as before. I think that unfortunately, when that does happen, though, for a striker, it's a lot more noticeable. Obviously, if a defender plays a bad pass, you will notice that too. But every so often, there are going to be nights that any one person has a bad time out there. And if Seba was, getting into the good positions, I will have to definitely note that amongst everything that was going on, he was getting on the end of these crosses and he was putting himself into positions to score. It was just unfortunate, as you said, that while his passing was bad, his shooting was bad, it might have been the execution of the actual move as opposed to doing the move itself and getting yourself where you need to be. So I like I said, I do want to note that, but yeah, it's probably just a case of that time that you are like, man, nothing is working for me. I'm working my butt off, but nothing is going right. And unfortunately, we saw it play out and turn into a 1-1 tie.
Yeah, I agree. I do think that it was one of those games where you just, you could be doing everything right, but something just doesn't click. Whether that's your finishing or your passing, you could be getting yourself in really good positions or trying to help your teammates get good positions, but it just doesn't click. And I think that's what happened with Seba on Friday night. Another player that didn't click was Jordan Adebayo Smith. He came on as a sub, hasn't been starting due to the form of Gonzalez and Dos Santos. But throughout the season, James, you and I, we had periods where we would talk about Smith. Why is he missing more than he's scoring? Which, you could probably say for a lot of strikers, but in this case, he's missing crucial 1v1s in many games this season, and he did it once again against New York Red Bulls too. He's through on goal 1v1. With the goalie. I believe it was towards the end of the game. I can't remember if it was the last 10 or 15 minutes, but he's through on goal. And then he tries to put it past the goalkeeper. I'm pretty sure, from what I can remember, I think the goalie blocked it. But I think it's really key to remember that, it's not the first time this happened. And we think, I would have thought that, when you spend that much time on the sidelines because of other players performing, they're performing better than you, and that's why they're starting. And that's why you get to wait your chance again. I would think that as a player, you will go in and whenever you get a chance at that, you put it away. Yeah, you can miss one here and there, but if it's 1v1 and you really want to earn a spot, or show the coach that, coach, if you put me in, I'm gonna, score a goal for you or make a difference in the game. Jordan Smith gets that chance and doesn't put it away.
Yeah, it's a case here that I think, it might come down to the youth and it might come down to the occasion. I don't want to do the thing again with, like what I just said with Seb. I don't want to do the thing where, you go to the worst possible conclusion. The worst possible conclusion here is that Jordan Adebayo Smith is, he's a 20-year-old, but he's just never actually going to make it. He's not good enough. I don't think that's true. I think that he is good enough. I think that he has shown on several occasions that he has all of the qualities needed to play in this role, especially off the bench. But what I would say about that is that, does mean that you have to kind of warm yourself up and get into the game as you go along, of course. And when you're sitting on the bench more than you're getting playing time, that can also affect how well you are, your confidence and how well you expect yourself to do out there. So maybe this is just a youth thing where he needs to get better at psyching himself up, which is, what I just mentioned for the Red Bulls 2 team, in fact. And I hope that that's the case, obviously, because I do think that he has the capabilities. He just needs to turn this into a lot more consistency because, he has a couple of goals on the season and a couple of them have even been important ones. But he's also missed a couple of good opportunities that both of us have noted over the course of this season in our podcast. So I would like to hopefully see that turn around. And maybe if he does so, sooner rather than later, once we get into the playoffs, that would be good too.
I agree, and the reason why I mentioned this is because you mentioned it. The playoffs are really, really close. It's only, I believe, there's only 3 games left in the regular season, and then it's time to win or go home. But the reason why I mentioned this is because Jordan Adebayo Smith, he said he's a really talented player. He does have a future in professional soccer. He has amazing pace, amazing ability to score goals. But when he doesn't, I feel like Neil Collins, although I don't know what Neil Collins is thinking, what I'm thinking is that Neil Collins looks at Jordan Adebayo Smith, Juan Tejada, Dayon Harris, sometimes Lucky Mkosana, he looks at these players on his bench, and he's going to wonder during the playoffs, which player can I rely on to get a goal or make a difference? If Adebayo Smith doesn't put that chance away, or let's say he gets another chance in the remaining 3 games and he doesn't put that chance away either, I just feel like when the playoffs come around, Neil Collins has bench, and when he looks about Smith, he might be saying, as good and talented as this kid is, I don't think he's ready for the moment, or I don't think he'll give me that spark or goal that I need. So then, he calls on someone else from the bench to go in the game. Do you kind of see it that way too, James, or you think I'm just like overreacting in this case?
No, I think you're right. It's the case that we didn't have all of these guys in the middle of the season, and now he has Neil Collins that has almost his whole team. There is one player that is still working his way back from injury, and then there are obviously the 2 backup goalkeepers, but everyone is available to use, and they will, if you need a goal, then you need to bring on whoever has the hottest hand behind the 2 guys who start, who have the hottest hands. Sebastian Guenzati obviously has been on fire. He has the hottest hand. Steven Dos Santos, I would say, has earned this position by showing himself to be capable of getting very good goals at opportune moments, but also he plays very well with Seba and the guys that they have put on the field around him. So it just comes down to who is behind them, and in terms of right behind them in terms of their ability to score this season. And unfortunately, as we've noted, Jordan Adebayo Smith hasn't quite done that. So I think that he can, and I think that at some point he will, but we're not there yet. So you have to turn to somebody else, and maybe that's Lucky, maybe that's Juan Tejada, but I don't know. Maybe somebody else will distinguish themselves in the next 3 games. I certainly would like to see that.
Yeah. James, you and I, we really do. We know we're not Jordan Adebayo Smith haters. We really do want to see him succeed. I feel like I'm just worried
Absolutely.
I'm just worried that these chances might cost him, some time to provide that spark. And when playoffs do come around. And moving about Smith, I want to talk about Jan Ekra. We noticed that he did exit early in the game, and I want to ask you this, James. Do you think that's maybe another reason why the Rowdies didn't get all 3 points, or really have that extra engine or that extra man who is really good, who's in really good form as a number 10 to give him that extra spark they needed to go on and win this game.
I definitely think from my outside perspective, not anybody who was in the locker room, of course, but yeah, I think that there is a definite case to be made that affected the game negatively for the Rowdies, because before he went off, and he went off in the 16th minute for anyone who was unable to catch the game, he was doing very well. I actually had in my notes before then, Ekra looking good. And, he had gone on a couple of little runs, if I remember correctly. And he had turned this one player at one point and, beaten a couple guys after that to lay off a ball. I thought that, okay, Jan Ekra is up for it. He's just looking like the same old consummate professional that we have come to see him as over these last couple months, especially. And unfortunately, if he goes off early, then you don't have that. Now, what they did at that point was they brought Connor Antley on. And Connor Antley went to right back. Sebastian Dalgard, who had started at right back, went to left back. And Leo Fernandez, who was at left back, actually moved into the attacking side of the field so that he would bring and be the third presence up top. And I don't want to knock, obviously, Leo Fernandez's effort, because Leo Fernandez played a part in the goal that the Rowdies ultimately scored, and we've seen him do so much throughout the course of this season. But if they're playing in a different set of roles from what they are used to, that might also affect things. As anybody knows, you're just starting something not new, but starting something you're not as familiar with. And I think that maybe that is part of it. But in addition to that, you can't knock Jan Ekra's presence recently, which obviously we were missing for more than 2/3 of the game. And I hope that I believe you said that he won't be back on Wednesday, but I do hope he gets back soon, because we definitely did miss him as far as I am concerned out there.
Yeah, and pre-game press conference earlier today, Neo did announce that he would not be available for selection on Wednesday, and they're still not sure of how much time he will spend on the sidelines. So, hopefully, I'm pretty sure us and every single Rowdies fans will hope for the best news possible out there for Jan Ekra. But the reason why I asked is because, the passing to me was just not fast and efficient enough to get through the New York's defense. And, James, like you mentioned earlier, the runs that Jan Ekra was doing, he was doing runs and movements that really no other player was doing. And when he got out and they put Leo number 10, don't get me wrong, Leo is a really good player, and I'm pretty sure if you tell him, hey, Leo, go play on the right, or Leo, go play center mid, or Leo, go play as a striker, he's going to do it. He's going to try to do it as best as he can, although it's not his natural position.
Absolutely.
He will do it, because that's just the kind of player he is. But it seemed like each player was just trying to wait for another player to create something besides just passing the ball side to side, passing the ball back and forth, not really doing anything with it. It seemed like, either someone was relying on a moment of magic from Santos or Guenzati or Dalgard or Lewis Hilton with a set piece, but nothing clicked from it. Although they did create some good chances, nothing really clicked for any player to really take charge and, have the ability to make that final key pass to allow someone in on goal. But, we didn't really see stuff like that. So with that being said, the Rowdies are now 2 games winless. So I'm asking you, James, do you think the fans should be concerned that we lost against Pittsburgh and we tied against New York Red Bulls too? Should the fans be worried or concerned?
At this point, I would say don't get too upset about things. Obviously, any away game to Pittsburgh is going to be a very tough task for anybody. And I think, if we were to be playing against them away during the playoffs, that would be something that would definitely concern me. We have seen that we can win away from home, and we have seen that we can beat good teams away from home if you even go back to the playoffs from last season. But that's still a very tough ask. And in the middle of all this congestion of games, players' heads are looking at different things, unfortunately, just because of the nature of what we do, in terms of an actual mentality. I don't mean the people out there themselves, but all humans are, considering what's in front of them. And when we go away to Pittsburgh and we do a little bit of rotation after we have a home game, and we have a home game coming up shortly afterwards, that you got to focus on making sure you get all those points. that I'd really, I feel a little hard pressed to get too worried about that one. The game against the New York Red Bulls, I think that one is a little bit more something that you could look at and be like, hey, well, what's going on there? And as much as you and I are going to continue to break down some things that we saw, and we have already done some breaking down at this point, I don't think at this point it is something that we need to be concerned about, just because it's only really one game that maybe wasn't at the top level with all of the top players, is what I would like to point out. So we're going to see how they do, obviously, in this next game against Miami. Miami's a tougher team, and we're going to have most of our players available outside of Jan Ekra and Luis Fernando, who hasn't played yet this season. But we will see how well they can bounce back. And then, if there's something that we notice that is hanging over from this past game against the Baby Bulls, that would be something that I could be like, okay, we got to see how that's going to turn out. But right now, I would just caution against it.
Yeah, I agree. I also have here noted that for now, we shouldn't be concerned. I think fans should not be worried, but let's just see how the Rowdies react within, the next game on Wednesday or the next game after that. We'll see how they react. And one thing I would say is that, there's only 3 games left and then the playoffs come in. So although you don't necessarily need to have a good game to advance in the playoffs, you just have to win. But I feel like the Rowdies, they would prefer to have, enter the playoffs on a good note, whether that's winning the last game, winning the last 2 games, or winning the last 3 games. They want to go into the playoffs with the winning mentality and with a good morale. So let's just see how they react. And another thing I want to mention is that when this Rowdies team was flying high really recently, they were breaking records, they were on a winning streak, but then it ended against I believe it was Pittsburgh. I'm guessing. I think it was Pittsburgh that ended it for us. But one thing I would say that it's very hard to recreate that form. I think I said it in the previous podcast that once a team's flying high and something, whether it's a draw or a loss that ruins that record or that streak, it's very hard for a team to, go through those emotions again or go through that mindset again of, all right, we have our 4th one, let's do another one. All right, we have our 5th one, let's do another one. All right, we have our 6th one, let's do another one. It's really hard to recreate that form, and I'm just hoping for the Rowdies that, although I did say we shouldn't be concerned, I think we do need to find a way to get back to winning ways before the playoffs, is what I'm trying to say. And as we move on, James, we already mentioned how Jan Ekra won't be available for Wednesday, and we also don't know how long he will be, how long until he is available. So who would you say should take his place within the starting lineup, depending on how long Jan Ekra faces timeout?
Well, I don't mind the lineup that they went into when Jan Ekra went out and Connor Antley went on. I think that definitely can be something that has some success. And my reasoning is, it's pretty simple. The way that I see it, Leo Fernandez is mostly a defender at this point. When you're a left wing back, you obviously do get into the attack a lot, and he does. But anyone who's on the defensive line or has back in the title of their position, you are still a defender first and foremost, and you have to, be able to do that role. So if we compare that to what Jan Ekra has been doing, he has been part of the attack for the most part, and then when the player get forward into that 3-man, be an extra defender up there to put pressure on their defensive line. So let's say one of the center backs for New York Red Bulls in this past game had the ball, and they were looking for somebody to pass to. The Rowdies usually like to put pressure on them so that they can try and win the ball in a very high position, obviously, down the field and close to the Red Bulls' goal. Jan Ekra has been doing that extremely well, and you and I both first really noticed this against Charlotte Independence. This was when the infamous game against Christian Fuchs that we have been referencing over and over this season. Since then, he just did such a good job of putting pressure on Christian Fuchs. We've noticed it every game since then, too. He is very good at playing that role. So if you switch it over and we're talking about Leo Fernandez, defender first, attacker second, what do you do when you're in that role? Well, when the other team, in this case Miami, coming up, have the ball, they are going to start, obviously, with their goalkeeper or their back line, because that's usually where they have most space. If Leo Fernandez is able to put on a good amount of pressure, like I believe he can, then maybe he can get them to cough up the ball in a bad position. Or when we have the ball, he will be very adept at attacking their goal with it and getting himself into good positions with good runs. We have seen all of that happen from him this season. So I honestly don't mind going back there into that same position, but I would just hope that obviously they know Jan Ecker is getting out or it won't be available for this game. So let's try and get some repetitions over the course of training this week leading up to the game. And then that will get everybody a little bit more familiar with the roles that they're playing. That's the only thing that I would hope for, obviously, a difference between the New York Red Bulls game and this Miami game coming up. But yeah, I think that it would be good that way. What did you see, or what would you like to see?
I just want to say, it's a really good point that you did with, practice that Jan Ecker role in training with other players, specifically Leo Fernandez, to get ready when a game day does come. You're not really confused. You're not really, like you said, you need to learn when to attack, when to defend, and when to stay in the middle. Because Jan Ecker does all those things very, very solid. So, practice that on your players. But what I would want to see is either Dos Santos or Sebastian Gonzalez at number 10. We really see plenty of times where either Seba or Steven drops back and collect the ball or hold up the play. They both work really well, and dropping back. That way the Rowdies can get possession and get numbers forward. So what I would do is, drop one of those two players, have them in a role where they could drop back, collect the ball, pass it out, and then give them time to go up and join the attack as well. I'm not asking for, Dos Santos or Gonzalez to always be always be defensive minded throughout the game, because we both know they're really talented attacking players. So I just would like to see Neo, position them in a role where they will drop back more than usual, but it can also lead them to more goal scoring chances. Not necessarily either Dos Santos or Gonzalez scoring, but maybe opening up the field for other players to go in on goal, like Leo Fernandez or Sebastian Dalgard. And if you do take one of those players to drop as a number 10, whether it's Dos Santos or Gonzalez, and then I will put have Dayon Harris as a striker, even though he's usually more as a right wing back within this team. But we've seen times where he does play as a striker, and lately, from what I've seen, every time he gets subbed in, Dayon Harris just looks like, he looks like one of the most dangerous players on this team. He takes advantage of his pace. He has, he may be short, but he does have a good physicality against opponents that he does take advantage of. And he just makes it look easy putting crosses in the box or taking players on 1v1. So if you have him as not necessarily your focal point, but as a striker who can spread that back line and put in good services in the box, or provide opportunities, provide more space for players like Seba or Dos Santos to get in behind too. I feel like that system could really work. But at the end of the day, I think if I'm being realistic, I think Neo's going to go with what you said, James, having Leo Fernandez as that number 10, because the past two games he's tested that out, and we've seen it. We've seen it work.
Yeah, I think that either way, the thing about this Rowdies team is that it was built for extra contingencies. When one player goes down, and we haven't seen it in a little while because we have had the full team available to us for a good stretch. But if everybody remembers from previously in the season, there were lots of injuries that we were dealing with. So I think that Neil Collins had that in mind over the course of this season, and he knows kind of his way to get out of it. It wasn't the most convincing in the middle of the season over the summer months, but I think that still, if he's only really down one of his usual starters, there should really be no excuse at this point for anything less than, a very strong win. But that's what I would say. Mm-hmm. And to that end, in fact, our next question here is, how can the Rowdies bounce back, Leo? What would you say is what you would like to see, not just from the lineup, but actually out on the field?
On the field, it might be easier said than done, but I would just like to see, them. I would like to see them win the next game and assure the fans that everything's okay. I know winning is easier said than done, but if you do win this next game, especially against the Miami FC, who's from the same state that you play in, it adds a little bit more competition, a little bit more rivalry to that, and also just continue to play good soccer as we've seen, throughout most of the campaign after. July, they've just been playing some really good soccer, breaking records, keeping clean sheets, and hopefully you have 3 games left. I feel like if you try to get one more clean sheet or, all 3 games left, you get clean sheets in them. But as long as you get one more, I think, that's another good way to bounce back in terms of the defensive aspect because they haven't kept clean sheets in a good minute. And also be more quicker with the passes in the middle and out wide. It seemed like at times they were a little bit slow where they gave the opposition enough time to settle their defense and get their defensive players into a good positions where the Rowdies wouldn't get through. So if you speed that up a little bit, I feel like you're only helping yourself out. You're gonna catch the opposition off guard, and also have players get better balls in the final third. I know James, you and I said that this was probably an off game for Guinzotti in terms of his passing and also his finishing. But those small mistakes do make a big difference throughout the game because those are just chances that you're wasting. And there was other times where I believe it was either Lawrence White or Sebastian Dalgard who would give really good passes to Steven Dos Santos, but it just looked like he was missing that extra bit of pace that he usually provides, or that extra step he has on defenders. That it just wasn't there. So if you get that back, it will help you bounce back to the usual form that with this Rowdies team is capable of playing at. And also, as we've seen throughout the season, just continue to be clinical in set pieces. Even if you don't score, just be the first player to get ahead on it, whether it goes out of bounds, when you force the goalie to make a save. Any of those examples I just named, I feel like those are perfect ways for the Rowdies to bounce back.
Okay, I like all of those points. And further, if we can expand on that just a little bit, then we talked about, what we might like to see for Jan Ekra with him being out. But do you think that there should be any squad rotation for this upcoming game?
I would say yes, but very little. You already have to rotate the squad to adjust with the injury of Jan Ekra, depending on who goes in.
Naturally, yeah.
I feel like most likely it's going to be Leo Fernandez in that number 10. And then you bring in another wing back, to fill in that role that Leo Fernandez usually operates as. From there, you have Connor Antley. You could put Dalgard on the left and have Connor Antley or Deion Harris on the right. What I would do is, I feel like that rotation, you really have an extra player come in. If you want to give Dalgard some rest, maybe ask Antley. Neil Khan's going to have to put Antley or Harris or even Juan Tejada to play on the left-hand side, which we know they're more comfortable on the right side or either up top. But I feel like it's kind of the risk you have to take because it is a shortened week. You don't have a whole week to rest. You have, I believe it was 3 or 4 days. It is a midweek game, so you have less time to rest. And playoffs are right around the corner. They'll be here quicker than most fans would know it. So
yeah,
I feel like you really got to play it safe. So I would say take the squad a little bit, but very little. Not to the point where you make 6, 7, 8 changes and the game plan you set out isn't really executed the way Neil would like it to be.
So if you don't want to see that much squad rotation, are there any thoughts you have on who should start or who might be benched?
I'm assuming that Jan Ekra was fit. Though I do like Dalgard on our right wing back. I do think he's been having a great season. I just feel like whenever Connor Antley or Deion Harris enter the game, it might be the fact that they're being operated as super subs at this point. I actually asked Deion Harris in the pregame presser, as you get more minutes in, as you're getting back to full fitness after that hamstring injury, how do you feel operating as a super sub role? And he told me that I'll do whatever Neil Collins tells me to do, whether that's entering the game or starting the game. I'm going to give him 100%. And I asked him, what separates you from Dalgard and Antley? He said, I think it's my pace. He said, I think it's my pace and my one-on-one ability. I think he told me that he thinks that most of the players on the team realize how fast he is. He does say that he is going to raise Jordan Smith soon because that's the player he thinks is closest to in regards to, who's faster than the other person. But the reason why I say this is because I think Deion Harris should start over Dalgard because we all know that, speed kills in this sport. If it's a counterattack, if it's a 1v1, speed is going to kill no matter what. And I feel like Dalgard provides more flair than pace. And, Harris provides more pace than flair. But, recently, from what I've been seeing from him, it just looks like he tries to use more of that to where he puts dangerous crosses in the box. That makes it very hard for opposition defenders to clear or get a touch on it. And then you just allow players like Steven Dos Santos, Sebastian Guinzotti, or Leo Fernandez, to get the ball into the net. And that's why I would say, heading into these last 3 games or the playoffs, assuming Jan Ekra only misses this game on Wednesday, I would really like to have either Antley or Harris in for Dalgard.
All right. Well, I understand all of those decisions, and I got to say I like them all. But we have one more question here before we move on to our hot take section, and that is your man of the match. Leo, would you like to start, or would you like me to go through mine?
I would like to start, but I just want to say that I'm pretty sure it's already been spoiled by producer Yuri. He put it out on Twitter before we got to record this episode, this show. But yeah, my man, the match is Teba Gonzalez. Although I've been saying that this throughout the show that he's wasn't really there with his passing or shooting, but he did get himself into those positions. And he looked like someone. If anyone was going to score, it was obviously going to be Gonzalez. So he just kept on going, even though he had an off day. He kept on going to the very last minute. So for that, he'll have my man of the match awards.
Yeah, my choice was also Sebastian Guenzati, and I know that everybody might be scratching their heads a little bit at us choosing him, but I will go through his statistics here before that. I do want to note that Sebastian Guenzati was getting into those positions. That's something we said. One of the positions that he got into was actually right behind the defender who scored the own goal that was the Rowdies' 1 point on the board. So everybody has to remember that, if you're a defender and there's somebody on your back, you got to get something on the ball. And unfortunately for this defender, but fortunately for the Rowdies, he got the wrong part of his leg on the ball, and it actually went past the goalkeeper, AJ Marcucci, and that's how the Rowdies scored. But other than getting himself into good positions, which is what we mentioned, Sebastian Guenzati did have some good statistics for this game. For one thing, he was the most fouled player in this match. And, I think that that's something to note because that does play into how well you can, get into the rhythm and the swing of things over the course of the game. His pass success was 70%. And I think that the biggest part of his game is something that we'll see actually on the defensive side. He lost 3 duels, but he actually won 9 duels over the course of this game. So, that comes down to headers and that comes down to little tackles and all that kind of stuff. Ultimately, as I noted, he was fouled 3 times, but he did not give away any fouls. And while doing that, he contributed 1 interception and 4 recoveries of the ball. So I think that all of those play into just how good of a game he had, even if he was unable to actually turn it into goals. He is somebody who will, like we said earlier, just work his socks off, somebody who will never stop trying. And even if it's an off night, he's going to put himself into the positions. And when you put yourself into positions, as we have noted with, the expected goals statistic, it's often the case that if that is very high for you and you're not scoring, eventually you will turn that into goals. And Sebastian Guenzati did turn that into goals over a series of a couple of games this past month. So I think that he will be able to rediscover that touch as long as he keeps putting himself into good positions. And, there's nothing that shows us that he will not continue. And that's why I will give him the vote of confidence that is the Man of the Match award for this past week.
James, man, I love when you use all those statistics. Like, I come out here with just what I seen from the game, and you come out here with, like you say, expected goals and duels won and everything. So you totally outpower me in regards to having more evidence on why you chose your man of the match. I need to step up my game a little bit. Maybe after we're done recording, I could ask you where do you get your information from, so I could probably be a little more clinical in my decision process. But moving forward with our,
we still got to the same conclusion, so it all worked out.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. Moving on to our hot take segment. My hot take for the week is that if the Rowdies don't win the next game, I just really feel like they're not going to rediscover their winning streak form again. For the rest of the regular season, which might be a little bit damaging heading into the playoffs. And I say this because, one, we haven't really kept a clean sheet ever since our streak got ruined for keeping clean sheets. We haven't really kept a clean sheet since, and also it just seems like although these last 2 games, playing at Pittsburgh, like I said, James, is difficult. And last game was just an off game. That's why I say if we don't win this next game, then it's like, okay, what other what's happening? What can we say for the reason for why they didn't win the game against the Miami FC? Besides, of course, that the Miami FC is a really good team, and it will be a rivalry game because, like I said, they are in the state, the same state that the Rowdies play for this league. So I just feel like if they don't win this game, it might take a toll mentally for this team, in regards to like, man, why aren't we winning? We were just having really good form. Now we haven't won our last three games. What's going on? We have too many games left in the regular season, and then I feel like it hurts you a little bit. I know players want to admit it that it's taking too much of a toll on their minds, but I just feel like they really got to win this next game, especially it's their last home game of the season as well.
Yeah, I can understand where you're coming from there. And to build off of one of the points that you noted while you were saying that, the Rowdies have not had a shutout since they went on that shutout streak, that infamous shutout streak that we had mentioned earlier. Now, my hot take of the week is exactly related to that. I think that all three remaining games, it is crucial for us to not give up a goal. The shutout streak that we had was really, not only just was it something cool that we could say that we had this 891-minute streak of not giving up a goal and trying to go for records and all that kind of stuff, but it is also a huge boost in confidence because it's exactly what you just said. If if you don't score, then the other team will. And if the Rowdies are the ones who are keeping teams from scoring, then obviously they are going to be the ones that do score. And I think that if Sebastian Guanzotti, Steven Dos Santos, whoever is up top, see that the back line is playing their lights out games like they have been, then they're just going to know that, okay, even mess up, and nothing is actually going to happen bad behind me. So I can do what I know how to do, and I don't have to think about it. It is also crucial to not give up a goal for reasons related to records, but I'm going to get into that later in the show, so we will return specifically to that. Beforehand, I want to cover the standings, and then I will let Leo get into the preview for our next two games that are both coming up this week. Right now, we are first in our division, and we are first in the East. We have 62 points from 29 games played. If you look below us, Charlotte and Pittsburgh both have 52 points. Charlotte from 29 games played and Pittsburgh from 30. Miami is in fourth place in our division with 49 points from 29 games played, and they have all qualified for the playoffs. So the playoff positions are set other than who will be in first, second, third, and fourth. Actually, we will be in first. I shouldn't say that. But anyway, if we look at the other Eastern Conference division, the teams to right to our west, Birmingham Legion actually now lead Louisville City. They have 57 points from 30 games played, and Louisville have 55 points from 30 games played. So that's something to note. Birmingham Legion have showed themselves to be a good team all season, and now they have actually taken the lead over what a lot of outside pundits consider Louisville. They consider them to be, one of the best teams in this league. I think that the Rowdies would have something to say about that, but regardless, you can definitely know they're good, and Birmingham have gone ahead of them. So they are somebody to be reckoned with, certainly. If we look over to the West, El Paso lead their division with 58 points from 29 games played. And then the farthest West division, you will see the league leader. It is Phoenix Rising with 30 games played and 65 points from that. So they are 3 points ahead of us right now. Unfortunately, this past weekend with the game against the Red Bulls, we really did have a good chance to go top. I think that we kind of, unfortunately, but there will be another chance coming up, though, with this game against Miami on Wednesday that we are going to get into. We are currently 1 point away from securing the top seed in the Eastern Conference, so certainly we need to get that. But I think, as we said, we need to win this game anyway, and we should do so with a shutout. If we win this game, then we will have 21 wins over the course of this season, and Phoenix will have 20 wins, both of us from 30 games played. So if I'm not mistaken, that should put us ahead on the head-to-head points, and we would be league leaders. And that would secure us home advantage, which we would then hopefully ride out for the rest of the season. So that is what I'm looking for in the rest of over the rest of this last three games.
I believe the head-to-head tie does work that way. And I think if anything that the season has taught us, James, is that soccer really is a marathon. There was at one point where I believe it was Louisville that was just blowing every team out in regards to that top spot in the Eastern Conference, and now they're second place in their division. So it's really crazy how the tables are starting to turn within each team of their conference.
Exactly.
Now the Riders are 1 point away, as you said, from securing the top seed in the Eastern Conference. But yeah, as we move on from the standings, we're gonna get into the match preview this Wednesday. So the Rowdies do play against the Miami FC, as I'm pretty sure most people are aware of, because James and I have said that about 5 to 10 times so far this this podcast. And on a side note, Wednesday also happens to be my birthday. So Rowdies, if you can win on Wednesday, October 20th, then that would be really, really pleasant birthday gift for me. So I'm really looking forward to that. The game will be at Outlang. I believe it is the final game at Outlang in regards to the regular season. Is it, James, or we play Las Vegas
Yes.
Lights? It is?
No, it is our last home game, and then we are
Okay.
away to Loudoun County in Virginia, and obviously Las Vegas, like you said, for the last one.
All right, so this is our last home game. I'm really sad I won't be able to go to it, but I will for sure be at the playoff games. Pretty sure my family's gonna want to take me out for my birthday. But anyways, as James said in the standings, Miami has already clinched a playoff spot. They do sit in fourth place of the Atlantic Division, as James said. They still have 3 games to go to climb up to either finish in second or third. They can't finish in first because yours truly, the Rowdies, have already clinched that spot. So this game does mean something to them, and plus it's a rivalry match, so you definitely don't want to lose those bragging rights if you're the Miami FC. So even adds more pressure for this Rowdies team. And this season, the Miami FC, they do have a record of 14 wins, 8 losses, and 7 ties. But just like the Rowdies, they are winless in their last 2 matches. James, I think you have a little bit more of insight of what kind of players to expect or not expect for this game against the Rowdies.
So there is obviously the usual suspects in terms of this Miami team. They are going to be dealing, the Rowdies are going to be playing against some top players in this league. I think that one that we need to note is Speedy Williams, Devin Speedy Williams. He is a midfielder for them, and he has been playing in these past couple of months for the Jamaican national team in the World Cup qualifiers, and that is sometimes over players based in England who are, regulars in the not in the Premier League, but in the league right below that, the English Championship. So that's something to be wary of. He's a very good player at this level, and I think that the Rowdies are obviously going to have to keep an eye on him just as much as anybody else. Pierre De Silva is somebody that we've had some trouble with up top, as well as their central attacking midfielder Ariel Martinez, a Cuban 33-year-old player. As much as that is old for soccer, he is doing extremely well. I'm sorry, he's not 33, he's 35, but he is doing extremely well for his age. He is still spry and definitely very fit. He has thrown the Rowdies for a couple of loops over the course of the season. And I think that he definitely has the capability to do that at any time. So those are some players we're going to have to keep an eye out for. Someone that we won't have to keep an eye out for, as you just mentioned, unfortunately for someone in Miami, and I guess the team as well, Joshawn Anglin, Jamaican player that they signed this past season. He was recently arrested for sexual assault, I believe, on the campus of FIU. So he should not be out there for Miami, and I guess that we won't have to worry about him. But it should be noted, obviously, that there are plenty of other players that they have, even from Jamaica, including Lamar Walker, a player who has also been called up for these past World Cup qualifiers. So they are down 1, but they are not, missing. They are not a bad team by any chance. And they have several other World Cup qualifying competitors out there. Actually, one other one, just to mention very quickly, Joshua Perez. He is a former U.S. youth international who has recently been called up to the El Salvador national team. So that should take it for all of the players that we should kind of, be familiar with beforehand. And, the other thing is we've played this team 3 times already this season. So I think I'm really speaking to a lot of people who already know what we're going to be dealing with. But yeah, these are the guys that we should definitely know, and the Rowdies players should be keeping their head on a swivel so that they know where they are at all times.
Yeah, definitely. It's always very important to know who you're playing against. But in the game press conference earlier today, Neil was asked what kind of game is he expecting for this Miami FC game. What kind of approach is he expecting the opposition to have when they do come to Outlang? Neil's said, I honestly do not know, and that's what makes them dangerous. They can either control the game or they can sit back. But one thing he does know is that they can hurt you in so many ways. He said, all I can do is prepare, his team to play their game and not really worry about the way Miami FC will play, because he said if he pays attention too much to opposition, it's going to hurt his own team on how he approaches this game. So that's kind of, wary if you're a Rowdies fan, when your coach says he doesn't know how the opposition will approach this game, because it doesn't really give you, you know, have that advantage of, okay, they're gonna play this way. I could do this game plan to stop them. But on the bright side, this Rowdies team is, has overcame adversity throughout the season in different circumstances. In the games this season. So, and when you have a talented squad within this team and so much depth within this team, I feel like, it's not a bad bet for fans to back their team to beat the Miami FC. And after all, we do lead the division. We also do lead the conference. So that's also a plus. But yeah, there's also a game this Saturday, but it's away at Loudon, and it's at 9 p.m. Is this the latest game so far this season, James? I don't remember hearing a game at 9 p.m. for the Rowdies.
Yeah, I think that most of our games are, the standard,
right?
Yeah, the standard 7 or 7:30, because that's where they are on the Eastern Conference, or excuse me, on the Eastern Seaboard. But maybe they had some other thing in mind. I'm not really sure what's going on.
And we have a producer note here that 9 p.m. wasn't late enough. When we go to Las Vegas, we played at 10 p.m. So it gets later and later. I might need to drink some coffee to stay up for those games. But one thing I will say is that Loudon is eliminated from playoff contention. They only have 4 wins the entire season, only 4. And one of those 4 wins they got, I believe, 8 days ago against the Miami FC. Probably one of the biggest upsets so far this season. So might be a team to look out for. But James, you have noted that this is an absolute must-win, a must-shutout against the bottom team.
Yeah, if we do anything short of, I would say, smashing this team, then I would be a little disappointed. But we do have to deal with.
I'm with you.
We do have to deal with the likelihood that there will need to be some rotation for the game against Loudon, because the Miami game is a home game, and it also takes a higher priority for that reason. It is on Wednesday, and this game is on Saturday. It's a very quick turnaround, but I still think that this team has quality to put them away regardless of who's out on the field.
Yeah, I totally agree. And with all that being said, I think it's time for our weekly predictions. James, do you want to go first for the Miami game or the Loudon game?
I'll go first for the Miami game, and then I'll let you go for the game, and we'll switch off that way.
Okay, sounds good. Go ahead.
All right. So, yeah, like I said earlier, I do want this game to be a shutout. I expect them to be able to pull that off as well. And obviously, this does need to be a win. So I am predicting for this game against Miami a 2-0 win.
No win. I should have went first. I kind of wanted that scoreline. But I'm going to go with, I don't think we'll keep a clean sheet, but I'm going to go with a close 2-1 win for the Rowdies.
Okay. And for Loudon, what do you see?
Loudon, I mean, you said it's absolute must win, absolute must shout out. I do think we'll shut them out. I believe it's going to be a 3-0 win for the Rowdies.
3-0 win. Okay, I am going
Considering
to
that
say,
there is rotation. Yeah.
I was going to say 3-0, but if you've taken that is the scoreline that I want to see regardless. So for that one, I will also say 2-0. I'll say 2-0 for both games.
All right. I think we got some really solid predictions in there, but, this season has been, I guess, it hasn't been favoring our predictions. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and that will take us into our final segment, the One More Thing.
Yeah. So what we hear is that it's a special surprise. We do have a bonus episode in the works. We will be speaking with Brian with the Rowdies Observer. So be on the lookout for that later this week. And you will be later this week unless noted otherwise. But if you want a little taste of what Brian is about, you can find him on Twitter at Rowdies Observer. Check it out. He has really good content for this team, and I think James and I are looking forward to speaking with Brian on the show. And also check out we collaborated with Cathedral Clothing. As I said earlier, there is a link to the description wherever you get your podcasts from, and it's for a really good cause. They're really good T-shirts, but most importantly, they're for a really good cause. They go to a Play for More campaign that was started by Forrest Lasso. And one more thing before we let everyone out of here, I'm going to talk about records. So the Rowdies need 15 shutouts. I believe it's to tie the record shutout, James, or is that to beat the record shutout?
I believe the record is 15 right now. We will need to go over that, but we have 3 more games and the playoffs coming up afterwards.
Yes. Okay, yeah. So we currently have 12. We need 15 to tie it and 16 to beat the record. But we currently have 3 regular season games, and it'll be best to get them all right now, to get all shutouts right now. That way, heading into the playoffs, all we need is one more clean sheet to break the record. Hey, if we get the clean sheets in the playoffs and we advance, I'm okay with that too. And another record, another record is that Jorge Herstov has 60 goals, and Saba could have had at least 57 this past game against New York Red Bulls too, but he currently still
57 in one game.
Exactly. I'm sorry. He could have had 2 more that game to have 57.
No, I'm saying he could have had 57 in this past game.
Could have had 57, yeah, definitely. He had that too. But he still has 55. He's 5 goals away from tying the record for the all-time goal scorer for the club, and 6 away for breaking that record. Having it as his own. Besides that, I think that's everything we've covered. Once again, thank you, listeners, and don't forget to please follow us on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook. We're there at RBLR Sports. If you're on Twitter, you can interact with James and I. My Twitter account, you can easily find me at _Leo Santos __. James, where can these people find you?
I am at RBLR James K, and if you would like to ask us any questions, you can do that as well using the hashtag AskRBLR.
Yep. Don't forget to do that if you want to talk to James and I or have your questions heard on the podcast while we're recording it live. And also, as I said earlier, we don't charge for this show, at least not for now, until we get over 1 million listeners, but should be anytime soon. But for now, please like and subscribe to our podcast. We're on Spotify, iHeartRadio app, Apple and Google Podcasts, YouTube, and other major podcast platforms. If you are listening somewhere your podcast and we're not on there, fortunately, that's a little bit out of our grade for James and I. You have to take that to Eureka, who is our producer. So, but besides that, I'm pretty sure we're everywhere. And without further ado, thank you, listeners, again. As always, come on, you Rowdies. Let's go. 2 games this week. Let's do it.
Come on, you Rowdies.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.